The sea was what his father called a cow-shitty sea, a brownish algae green that meant it would be good fishing, even though it sounded like it would be bad fishing. But when he said something was bullshit, like the landlord raising the rent, or not fixing the oven, or mentioning that he might put the flat up for sale, then that was definitely something bad. Except when he was in the pub, in a group, and then it could be said, and the laughter would be low and raucous as seagulls. To Ivor, it was all in the same murky category as words like restive. Ivor is a very restive boy, his teacher would say into the phone. Is everything all right? Apparently, that didn't mean that he was calm and easy. The beach had been scraped and dragged by the winter storms. It was almost March now, and where there had been sand there were stones, and where there had been stones there were now channels that kept their water long after the tide had gone back out. Crystal and Gull Gilbert were throwing stones at a limpet on a rock. The rock was covered in a rind of barnacles, and there were anemones deep in the cracks, dark red and glistening like sweets. Crystal picked up a handful of stones and threw them. One of them hit the limpet, but it didn't move. She went up and pressed her hand against it. The limpet grated a few millimetres across the rock. That one up there looks empty, she said. She was pushing the limpet, but staring at a house on the cliff. Let's do something else, Ivor said. The week billowed and sagged around them, like a tent that might stay up or might, at any moment, collapse. It was a school holiday. They'd already wrecked Crystal's TV and been forced out of Gull Gilbert's house by his brother, who had a girl hidden in his sour, dim bedroom. Ivor had seen her feet sticking out from under the bed. He put his hand in one of the pools. Sea gooseberries rolled in the wind, scattering like a smashed chandelier. The ripples in the pool were dark and bright. Crystal's hair was the same dark, dry colour as charcoal. You could rub your hand over it and get an electric shock. Sometimes it got tangled and clumps had to be cut off with scissors. She was the biggest person in their class, bigger even than Gull Gilbert, and could put a safety pin through the skin on her elbow. Last year, she'd pushed over a teacher. We've been in there already, Gull Gilbert said. He picked up a stone with two hands and swung it through the air. There were blotchy freckles on his wrists and neck. He never wore a coat. He picked up another stone. He was frowning like he always did when he was concentrating. He would throw for hours until he hit his target in exactly the way he wanted. When he was concentrating, you knew exactly what he was doing. When he wasn't, anything could happen. We haven't, Crystal said. Let's go back into town, Ivor said. There was an indent in the rock, shallow and easy to miss at first, where the limpet had been before it moved. It was exactly the same size as the limpet's shell, and it had the same rough curves, the same fluted edge. I want to go in that one. Crystal pushed her foot in the sand and turned a fast, lumbering pirouette. Gull Gilbert put his stone down slowly. Ivor closed his eyes and leaned into the wind. If he did it right, it was like falling without ever hitting the ground. The cold found its way through his jumper, puckering the folds of skin. Goosebumps, goose barnacles, sea gooseberries. There weren't as many geese as there used to be, his father said. He had mended Ivor's jumper with lumpy stitches. They'd already tried most of the other empty houses. There was the white one with the blue door, which had a porcelain doll on the windowsill that stared at them with its cracked face. The ceiling was streaked with yellow, and the whole place smelled like a stale tin of biscuits. They would prise up slates and scratch their names underneath, pick at the bare walls until the plaster flaked off like confetti, and lie on the stiff, damp beds. But this time, all the lights were on, and someone was standing in the kitchen. The big house with the red roof had people in it as well. There were bags and suitcases by the door, and the sound of voices and laughing. Sometimes they would go in there, sit on the leather chairs and read the tourist leaflets, then open all the cupboards to see if anyone had forgotten to pack anything. They'd found watches, cigarettes, a silky dressing gown that they'd taken turns wearing. Once, the oven had been left on by accident, and Gull Gilbert had turned it off, then, after a moment, turned it back on again. And then, just as they were testing the door of the stone house, the cleaning man had driven up and shouted something. Crystal had run first, then Gull Gilbert, Ivor struggling behind, his armpits streaming, that shivery, almost laughing feeling in his throat and bladder. The wind dropped, and Ivor tipped forward. The sand creaked under his knees like polystyrene. He opened his eyes. The others had already gone. Their footprints crossed the beach, sloppy as leftover cereal. Water rose up and filled each print, stretching them until they disappeared.